You're listening to the Brilliant Breakthroughs Podcast, episode number 35 with Jake Nawrocki.
Hi, small business owners. Welcome to Brilliant Breakthroughs Podcast, where we focus on creating brilliant breakthroughs for the small business owner. FYI, this is also the same name of the #1 Amazon best-selling book for businesses and entrepreneurs. The good news is you can find this book in paperback and in ebook form too. Just so you know which one it is on Amazon, go to Brilliant Breakthroughs for the small business owner. And the subtitle is Fresh Perspectives on Profitability, People, Productivity, and Finding Peace in Your Business. So I want to say hi, rock stars. My name is Maggie Mongan, and I am the crazy lady who put together this wonderful book. It's called an anthology, believe it or not. And it's a great book. And today we are honored to have Jake Nawrocki with us, a #1 best-selling author, to talk to us about your business's people reach and how you can reach your audience via podcasting in a way that you may not have thought of before. So welcome, Jake.
Hey, Maggie, how are you? Thanks for having me back on the show.
Yeah, so happy that you're back here. Are you ready to play?
Oh, I'm all in.
Okay, so everyone, Jake's chapter is the 6th one in the book, and it's titled Your Voice on Air. And Jake, you covered a lot of ground in your chapter, while at the same time, you only scratched the surface of a lot of the challenges that small business owners have when it comes to podcasting or expanding their reach, and they use podcasting for that. And you're an expert, so I imagine that people come up to you all the time and ask you questions about this. Yeah, no?
Oh, yes, they do. Yes, they do. All the time. I'm at the grocery store. Jake, I got a new podcast. What do? I got the answers for them.
So what do you say on your t-shirt? Jake, I'm a podcaster. Call me Jake.
No. My t-shirt says podcasting questions. Ask me. I'm here to help.
Very, very cool. So I know that sometimes people say, hey, does podcasting really expand somebody's reach? Or, how do you create a really good sounding podcast? And I think you're going to say part of it is about being purpose driven, and you'll have all sorts of other tips for us to share, right?
Right. The great thing about podcasting is that it is a very easy avenue for you to project your message, your ideas, your passions, commitments, whatever it is that you feel that you need to project into the world in a very easy form. The reason why I say that is because podcasting is almost on every cell phone that is available today. It is going to be in most new cars. I have a car that is about 2 years old already, and there's a podcasting app inside of the dashboard on my car. It's on Facebook, it's on social media, it's on YouTube, anywhere and everywhere. I believe podcasting has really come to the top. It's come to the top so much that even advertisers have kind of gotten off of the mainstream radio shows and have now come into the world of podcasting, to the point I would never think I would hear an advertiser like Starbucks start to push their new coffees, their new lattes, their new frappuccinos on podcasting shows. And when I heard that, I knew the power of podcasting was real. And that is why I had to share, of course, my vision, my ideas, and help individuals like yourself create a great show that can create an awesome impact. So,
Wow. Wow. I didn't know that Starbucks was
yeah,
advertising.
that was a very recent one, and when I heard that, I started to smile because, as we know, Starbucks is a very large business with a massive reach. Everybody knows about them, publicly traded company, and when they were advertising on a show, I was like, the barrier to entry. For an entrepreneur to start a show is very low. It's very cheap to start a great sounding show, but at the same time, advertisers know that people are listening to podcasts and they need to get their message, their business inside of people's eardrums so they can obviously purchase at their store. And when I heard that, I smiled. I was like, it's going to change. It's going to change the industry. Radio is not gone. Obviously, it's still there. But a lot of people are able to find a show that they love, that's specific to them, that has a message that resonates with them very easily. And businesses want to be a part of that. And so it just shows the power of podcasting is true.
Wow. Okay. So I guess then what we're about to talk about just has a whole new level of value for
Yes,
everyone,
yes, it
doesn't
does.
it?
Yes, it does.
Okay. So let's talk about this because there's a lot of stuff. And one of the things that you talk about in your chapter is about being real, being raw. And a lot of that I perceive comes from how we communicate, like our voice, inflections, all of that other stuff. Are we upbeat? Are we serious? Blah, 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 blah. Um, so why don't you lay it on us as to what we really need to know about podcasting?
So obviously when you start a show, besides the technology, and I think we'll touch on that in a little bit, of how to logistically from step A to Z, how to do it, it is what it is. I mean, any show that is start from the really popular to the really tiny, there is a system just like anything. That's totally fine. But the question is, how do you make the show yours, and how do you make sure that you're bringing in the right type of audience to your show?
Yeah.
And so the biggest thing, the most crucial, the one that's overlooked 99.9% of the time, because we all have it, it's our voice. A lot of people think that I don't need to either a create a voice or polish up my voice, or to think of a voice that I want to portray in my podcasting show. It's funny, when I start to be a guest on other podcasting shows, or when I go and create my own podcasting episode for my own show, I bring a different type of charisma. I bring a different type of energy. I bring a different type of Jake. My name is Jake, so I bring a different type of Jake to my show. And the question is, okay, I get that, but how do we either create that or manufacture that so we're comfortable in it, because it's still us full-heartedly, but how do we bring a little pizzazz to make sure it's energetic, to make sure it relates, to make sure we're bringing in those right people? And the reason I keep on saying over and over again, bring the right people, is because if you are an individual that's selling a high-performance auto care company, you don't want to be talking about, well, today I was really exhausted, and but we polish the cars and they look great. If you portray, if your company name is something really high quality, it has a lot of pizzazz behind it, you need to bring the pizzazz. And it doesn't matter if you're an individual that's self-conscious, you're like, I don't have a powerful voice. You can create it. You can manifest that out of you. And the question I get asked majority of the time is, how do you do that? And so I want to share with you a couple of resources. Number one, the biggest is just being aware of your surroundings. All of us have grown up. You're a mature individual of whoever you are. You have previous coaches, maybe from athletics, previous bosses or teachers or comedians, songwriters, authors, people that you have heard, just audio only, that you kind of took note of. For me personally, there was a football coach that was a hardcore Marine, and he had this just barking type of voice that I'll never forget. And sometimes when I really get fired up, I bring a little bit of coach with me in my podcast episode. And the same applies to you. There are people that you love, there's people that you probably hate, and there's probably some voices in between those two dynamics that you can kind of feather into your own personality and your own style. Now, what I'm trying to say here before is a disclaimer. I'm not saying be identical to those people that you enjoy, their voices, their styles. Be you, but feather in, just kind of roll in a little bit of those types of voices that you enjoy. So that's number one. Find it from your previous bosses, coaches, teachers, and just be aware of your surroundings. Okay, so that's number one. Number two, develop it yourself. That is through Toastmasters. That is through getting up and presenting. That is through just feeling comfortable speaking. If you're an individual that hates public speaking, you're fine. You're in good company, because when you're podcasting, you're inside your own office, or for myself, every once in a while, record in my own bathroom downstairs in the basement to get, some quiet dampening. But regardless, you're able to create that voice by just going through it. You're not going to be perfect when you start, but over time, you will start to perfect that voice. So again, in recap here, go and start talking. If you don't feel comfortable joining Toastmasters group, it's like $10 maybe a year or a month. I can't remember the prices, but you go up in front of a group that you don't know, and you start to tell stories, and you start to tell how-to presentations in front of people that are not your coworkers, they're not your family, they're not your friends, they're pretty much people you don't know. And yes, is it nerve-wracking? But at the same time, it gets you comfortable in your own skin, in your own voice. But also too, if you don't want to do that, if you think, Jake, I have an amazing business, I have an amazing message, I have an amazing thing that I want to share to the world, I know podcasting is my thing, but I don't like public speaking, again, all you have to do is start. It's going to feel a little uncomfortable, but you need to be comfortable with the uncomfortable to get to where you want to go. Podcasting is massive. I already told you the amount of companies and businesses that are coming in and wanting to get in between you and your customer. The power is there, people. You need to trust the process. You need to get good at your craft, and you need to get through the uncomfortable stages. And then lastly, too, just make sure that the voice that you're bringing in is your own. Feather in other experiences, other voices, other things that you like and heard from other people, and feather it into your own, as in energy levels, as in tone, as in tenacity, as you're speaking, you need to use facial expressions. You need to get into it. Use your hands, use your body, use the whole thing, your whole enabling self, as if you were on stage. So even if you don't feel comfortable talking in front of people, if you have to stand up, if you have to move your body a little bit to get that energy and create it. Maggie, you're a fan of Brendan Burchard. What is that quote that he always says? A facility doesn't have energy; it creates energy.
The oh my gosh. I shared this like 5 times.
The electric company doesn't
The
have
power
energy.
plant.
The power plant doesn't have energy. It generates energy. And the same with you. You need to generate your tone, your energy. Maggie and I almost had to edit our episode here just a little bit, but we're going to push through, because that's the power of podcasting. We're going to make this live. We're going to make this relevant for you guys, and to show that we're real people. We're not perfect all the time, and that's all right.
Okay, and I just have to interject here, Jake. Everyone, I'm having the pleasure of seeing Jake through this, and we had a conversation for a good while before we jumped into this recording. He is a different person right now. He is doing exactly what he said. His hands are flying through the air. He's looking all over the place. He's in a different groove. He's bringing a different Jake forward. It's the same Jake, but it's the Jake that he wants to project to make a lively conversation. Right. And I'm just loving it, because I have the advantage that others don't have to see the difference. So, hi, I'm Jake. You have your podcast questions, t-shirts? We all should be wearing them. Right. Okay. So what's the next thing? Because you pretty much covered this one pretty well. And I appreciate that, because there is a difference. I mean, you were talking about bringing the pizzazz. And yet, if you're a funeral director, pizzazz might not be the right thing to bring.
Very true. Very true. Or that may be your unique angle on your business, but more on that later.
Yeah, that's a different conversation. So let's go on to the next thing, because I think it's about messages and stories that you want to talk about next, right?
Yes. So stories is a big one when it comes to podcasts. But before I do that, I want to pump the brakes here for a second to kind of piggyback off of what Maggie was saying. The reason why I am bringing a different Jake is because in the world of audio, chances are your audience, or even the people that are listening right now, they either have headphones in their ears, they're either driving to work or a destination, they're thinking about their to-do list, they're thinking about emails, they're checking stocks. there's a lot of distraction in the world, and I know that I need personally to bring some energy to capture them, to make sure that I'm still top of mind for them. So that's the whole reason of bringing the tone, the energy of different voices into your voice. Okay, so just wanted to clear that up. So
Okay.
now let's pivot here back into stories. Stories are crucial, as we know. Any book, any movie, anything that is entertainment value, there is a story linked to it. If you want to create a podcast show or a specific episode that pulls on different emotions or different fabrics within that individual that's listening, the best way to do it is not to bombard them with facts or figures or graphs. It is truly through the power of storytelling. Now, as you know, there are some great storytellers out there, but chances are, if you're starting out in the podcasting space, if you're just beginning your business, you are not putting yourself in the space of world's best storyteller. So, what can I say to a beginning storyteller like yourself to have the courage to open up and to speak about a story that also relates to your business? That's the issue. I have a father that I love and adore. He's an individual that has done some pretty wild things in his life, but he is the worst storyteller because his stories are totally off in left field, but they do not relate to anything that the batter is doing currently. And so we always laugh and we go, "What's the point, Dad? What are you trying to tell us?" He's like, "Well, just never give up." And he's talking about how one guy was chasing a goat on an island to make food. It was just really crazy, disconnected stuff. From that made me realize that if you really want to make an impact, you have to have a story. It doesn't have to be monumental. It doesn't have to be the world's best, but it has to be a story that relates to what you're trying to do. And so the question is, where do these stories come from? They can come from a couple of different areas. Number one, obviously, you can from your readings, from books that you have read previously. Books are filled with stories because not only that, but books need to make sure that they're bringing energy and feelings and emotions to light. And the best way to do that is through a story that the author interjects or a case study or something like that. So if you're a reader, feel free to bring some of those stories into your presentations, your podcast. The second, obviously, is from you. The most passionate, the most sincere, and the most connectable are the stories that come from your voice, from your previous experiences. You maybe think to yourself, Jake, I am a boring individual. I have nothing going on. All I do is wake up, do podcasting, and I go back to bed. Well, unfortunately, if that's your life, then I'm sorry to say maybe you don't have any type of story. But for the individual that goes and drives their car, goes to the grocery store station, or goes to the grocery store, buys on Amazon, does general living things, you have stories. And the example that I'm going to say here to you is that there is a new phenomenon on YouTube called vlogging, where individuals are holding up a camera 24 hours a day and they're filming their life. You may be thinking to yourself, it's boring or whatnot, but just take a second and go onto YouTube and type in vlogging or travel vloggers or daily vloggers, New York City vloggers or whatever, and you will see that there are small stories sprinkled throughout that vlog. And the reason why I say that is because the individual that is in New York walking down the street talking about how great the weather is and he wants to be a weather forecaster gets bumped by an individual on the sidewalk. And because of that, the camera gets jolted. He has an interaction with that individual, and next thing you know, they know somebody that knows somebody, and next thing you know, they're shaking hands, they're hugging or whatnot. There was a story that was created out of that. That individual now is going to go back on his vlog and goes, "Hey, that was my friend Bill's best friend that was stood up at his wedding, and that wedding reminded me of this experience." And so what I'm trying to say is that you have experiences that are surrounding you every single second. And the question is, you can either be aware of that story or you can just let it flutter by and go, it's so non-relevant to my business. It's so not relevant to my podcast show that I would never incorporate anything like that. If you have that mindset and you don't believe that anything that you're doing is not going to assist your podcasting show, then I tell you what, you're not going to make the impact that you want. Because a stage show, a show that doesn't have a story associated to some type of fact or meaning or case study, is not going to wow the audience or want them to stay and continue to listen to your podcast episode or show. So stories are very key. If you don't know where to begin, you don't feel comfortable talking about some lame story that you personally think in your mind, then start outlining your day. What did you do that day? And fill in the gaps of a story that could. If I forced you, if I told you, if I held you over a fire pit, I said, tell me a story from today, tell me one, you would find something. And from there, tell that in your podcast episode. Get used to incorporating a story into your show, and it brings it to life. It brings your personality out in a non-arrogant way. You're not telling how awesome, the camera that you bought off of Amazon is, and you spent $5,000 on it. You can tell the story of how the delivery guy was walking up. You're going to meet him at the street. He tripped and fell. The box almost broke. And you check the camera, and here it is. And you're talking about a camera review now, or whatever it is. Obviously, I'm giving some very shotgun approach examples, but hopefully I'm trying to just pull and harness in the ideas of these stories are all around us. Let's make sure we capture them. If you don't feel like you have that ability to capture any type of story, you need to outline your day. And when you're outlining your day, instead of just putting went to the grocery store, rewind the tape. Think, okay, when I was in the grocery store, did I drop something? Did I see something happen? Was there somebody that was close by that made me smile or laugh? Or did I help a elderly person reach for something? Something like that you can pull a story from and interject that somehow, some way into your podcast episode. And you may be thinking, last thing here, you may be thinking, Jake, it may not apply to my show. If you do not incorporate a story somehow, some way, it will not make sense, or it will not allow the listener to get a better, more personal approach to you. And because of that, because of you feeling that you don't need to, you will lose that listener. And also, too, you will lose potential listeners, because podcasting is very unique in the sense that anytime a listener comes on onto your show, you get like 1 point. And for every point that you get on that particular day, your podcast show will either go up or down. It's like the stock market. And so if you have one individual come on in and gives you 1 point that moves you up just a little bit in the podcasting space under business title for your podcast show, there may be 3 people that now come on into your show and give you 3 points. So you have a total of 4. And as you see, it piggybacks and as they say, the compound effect, and your show will naturally grow. And hopefully then Starbucks knocks on your door and gives you a big check for wanting to advertise on your show. But what I'm trying to say is, get stories involved. Make sure your voice comes to life, and I'll be wrapping up with 2 more ideas here.
Yeah, I want everyone to really hear what Jake has to say, because there is power to this. I'm an avid blogger, have about 1,000 posts out there. And when I was down and out from a motorcycle accident and I sat outside for a good part of the summer, I watched my tomato plants, and I came up with a blog post about 5 sales lessons that tomato plants can offer. I watched the ants for about an hour because I was like incapacitated. And, and I came back to my laptop, and with one finger, I typed out a blog post about something I learned watching those ants. And somebody reached out to me and said, I don't know how you do this. It's absolutely amazing. But sometimes it's taking the obscure and finding a way to make it relevant, that it can serve somebody. And that's it. That's the magic. And we have the opportunity to do that. But I do like your no facts, no figures, no graphs, because in this world, or if you do have a story to back it up right away.
Right. Oh, totally.
Start with a story, because stories are where it's at. But there's something that I want to mention about stories that I find very true. And I know as soon as you hear this, you'll laugh, because you probably tell people this all the time. When we tell a story, it really helps if we start at the beginning and then move to the middle and then have an ending. Once upon a time, the hero's journey, and then happily ever after. Or not.
Right.
You know? But I think that when we talk about stories, we need to share that, because that helps streamline what to talk about.
Totally.
Yeah, like your dad. Otherwise, you're like,
yeah,
what?
exactly. And we laugh about it, but he would not do a good job of having a person want to continuously listen to them. It's easy for us to laugh, but if you are trying to build a business around a podcast, or you have a business and you're jumping into the podcasting space, you need to make sure that those customers, those listeners are retainable. And the only way to do that is to entice them with a story of some kind that relates to whatever you're trying to sell or service or product or whatnot. So yeah, very, very true. And also too, Maggie, I want to ask you, was it easy in the beginning for you to think about tomatoes and to start blogging about it? Or did you kind of have to think it through, but in time you got better?
Oh, yeah, yeah. I'd like to dump about the first 30 or 60 blogs that I did, but
Right,
I won't. I,
right,
I won't, because I want people to understand that it's rough at first and it's all good, but you get better.
right,
And it will always serve somebody, and at the beginning, maybe it's just serving you,
right. Very true.
so you can figure it out and then go capture what you need to capture.
Right,
So yeah, good point.
right.
Ugly starts usually are the way everything goes, right?
Very true. Very, very true.
Okay, so you have another point to mention. You're going to wrap us up with something, aren't you?
Yeah, so there's kind of two things. The last thing here I wanted to wrap up with is to pull back the curtain. How much do you expose of your own personal life on your show? And the reason why I say that is because obviously, when it comes to stories, you need to bring out some personal examples, things that are obviously not always going great. If you only tell great stories, people are going to think that you're not really human, because as we know, life doesn't always go with that, and so you need to share the truth. And when you start to share the truth, sometimes you start to get a little deeper than maybe you would like. And so I challenge you not to just fully pull back the curtain, but to know your limits. The reason why I say that is because in the world of social media and pictures and vlogs and videos and podcasts, some people really just let themselves go. Some people don't care about taking pictures of their children, posting it online. Some people do. Some people don't care about taking screenshots of their bank account, and some people do. Some people care about showing the behind the scenes of their business, and some people do or don't. And so it really is up to you to figure out your balance of how much you want to expose. The reasoning for that, again, we are making a personal connection. The reason why talk radio is so popular still today, even though podcasting is rising to the top, is because these individuals that are listening to talk radio are more mature. They've been around the block. They have created a very deep relationship to the author of that show. And the reason for that is not only because of the tone of their voice and how they present themselves, not only because of the stories that they share personally or through the storytelling of their show, but because of their personal experiences. They sprinkle in stories of their kids, or a trip that they went on, or a thing that they experienced personally. And so I want you to be aware of that. I believe it is very key for you to let the audience know who you are, what you're about, what you have going on. And the reason for that is because they need to know that you're a real person. They need to know that you're not perfect. They need to know that you are going through a lot of the same life struggles that they're going through. Likability, relatability, whatever term you want to use, is very key in the world of podcasting. There's a lot of shows that do a great job that are very popular, I should say, and the reasoning for that is because relatable. People understand. They see the struggle. They see the peaks. They see the valleys. They see the things are going right. They see the things are going wrong. But also too, they understand that they have a life beyond the business. They have a life beyond the message or the purpose or whatever your show entails. And so I want you to be aware of it. I don't have an exact formula for you. I don't have an exact checkoff sheet that you should include or should not include, but I want you to be aware of it. And I don't believe I really said this in the first point, which was finding kind of your voice and your tone. But listen to other podcast shows that are in the same type of business world that you're in. Um, Again, to listen not only to their tone and their stories, but just to hear, what do they share. Do they do Do they not share anything about them personally? Maybe that's where you could then, on your show, share a little more personal stuff, or vice versa. Just to hear what other people are talking about in your space is very crucial. Again, even though there are a lot of podcasts are talking about majority of somewhat of the same ideas. The biggest separator is you. You are the separator. Your voice, your stories, how much you share personally, is the difference maker. The material, the facts, the graphs are always going to be changing a little bit. You may have a little bit here or there, and they may be doing the same. But what really makes a show is the individual behind it. And if you can create that experience that when they turn on their podcast player, either on their cell phone or in the car, they can expect to get, well, for example, Jake or Maggie or you, on a consistent, regular basis. So those would be my three big takeaways for a conversation today.
Wow. I need to get a Jake's Awesome t-shirt and wear it in my grocery store. And everyone will say, who's Jake?
Right, exactly. And then that's a story. See, and then you're sharing a story. You're getting good at stories and all that stuff.
Ta-da! And that's how it can happen, folks.
Right. Exactly.
So, wow, you shared a lot with us. You shared voice, you shared stories, find the messages that are relevant, be real, be real, be real, be real, be real, and a little entertaining
Yeah, along the way.
is in there as well. And then do your homework and find out what's happening with others in your expertise. So you might identify a gap that you can fill very quickly.
Yeah, it's easy to find when you know what you're looking for, just like anything. If you're listening to other shows just to hear what they're talking about, you're missing the boat. You need to be listening to the show of how they're presenting. Great presenters, live presenters, I'm talking about public speakers, the reason why they get called back on the stage time and time again is not because their information is just the best ever. It's because they're the whole kit and caboodle. They're entertaining, their stories pull different emotions, different levers within the audience. They're obviously professional, but they bring their own pizzazz. And if you're able to kind of think of yourself as a professional speaker standing on a stage and you want to get hired time and time again, you need to present yourself like that on your own episode. And the best part about this, if your podcast starts to grow, and I know it will, and you continue to do this and you get better at your tone, you get better at your stories, you get better at your personal kind of pulling back the curtain of what you have, and of course your information that you're sharing just legitly about your business or product or service is legit, you will get asked to talk in your local business avenues. You'll be able and more comfortable to reach out to people and to say, hey, I have this product, business, service. I've been doing a podcast for X amount of days, weeks, months, years, whatever. And you already have the ammunition. You have the stories lined up. You have the examples and everything ready to go. So if you are called up to the big stage, you have the information ready at your disposal because you've been doing the effort well in advance. So I just want to remind you of that. And last thing, don't let technology be a handicap on you taking action and doing a podcast. The biggest thing I get asked time and time again is what podcasting equipment do I use? What microphone I use? What cords do I use? How do I get into the computer? Do I use a Mac or a PC? All that stuff that matters because obviously it's the only way to bring your podcast to life. But at the end of the day, it doesn't. Don't let technology be the thing that holds you back. Go out there, create a show, do awesome work, and provide great value.
And you answered a lot of those questions in your chapter on tech.
Yes, I did. Yes,
You were very specific, which was
yeah.
cool.
So if you want examples of the exact microphones and stuff like that, reference my chapter 6, your voice on air. In the back, I did a little Q&A, and everything that you need to kind of get started is right there.
Absolutely. Jake, I know we could go for another hour, but we're not. And I'm going to tell you while I'm doing a little bit of a wrap up here, I want you to get ready to tell us a story about your favorite food.
My
Ah,
my
yeah.
favorite food.
Yeah, we want to know what your favorite food is.
Oh, okay. Oh
Okay.
boy.
Uh, yeah. So let me do a little wrap up and then we'll
Oh,
come
okay.
back around.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. All right. All right. Very good. Thank you. Thank you for letting me think. All right. Perfect.
Yeah. I didn't want to blindside you completely because I want to hear a story. So, listeners, this is how you can learn more and engage with #1 bestselling author Jake Nawrocki. Start by reading his chapter. It's the 6th one in the book, Brilliant Breakthroughs for the Small Business Owner, and gift your business's performance by accepting Jake's invitation. He has an author at the end of his chapter, he has an author's page, and he put a very specific offering together for you. So make sure that you take him up on that invitation. Plus, he also has all of his social media handles out there for you to connect with him as well. Here's something else that's really, really cool. Right now, you can see everything about the book and how to get a hold of it and Jake by going to the books app, Brilliant Biz Book. I'll say that again, Brilliant Biz, B-I-Z, book. All right, so Jake, before I wrap us up, oh no, wait, hold on. I'm gonna play one on you here. While you're while you're at that app that I just shared with you, Brilliant Biz Book, I want you to click on Ask an Expert, and you'll see Jake Nawrocki's name. Click on that name and type in a question that you have for Jake regarding podcasting or anything he shared with us today, and he'll reply back to you. We promise. Right, Jake?
Right on.
Hey, we promise, right?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. So before I wrap us up, Jake, tell us about your favorite food and give us a good story.
All right. Two favorite foods, real quick. Number one would be custard from Cops. It's a local eatery here in the Milwaukee area. It's unlike any ice cream you have ever had, potentially around the country, wherever you're listening in from. But the reason why I say custard, my grandmother, on my mom's side, that is literally all she would eat. She would be in the backyard up at the cottage, swinging away, and she would be eating a half a gallon of this custard that we would bring up from Milwaukee because she would stay up there most summers, and she would just be rocking away back in the forest, just doing her own thing. And to this day, that was a great representation of that food, bringing home the history of my grandmother. But the second, I would say, the real food would be a fish fry. It's not because of the fish fry itself, but because of where it took me. Up north Wisconsin is a very near and dear place to my heart. It's family, fun, just amazing place. But there's this old bar called Birmingham's, and Birmingham's is unique because you walk on in and you don't go to your table right away or even get seated. You have to get the attention of the bartender and flag him down, and you have to give him your order. There are no menus. It's like word of mouth kind of place, like almost like a secret menu. And the unique part is they take your order, you pay for your meal, and you just wait there. You wait at the bar, and even though there's all these open tables, the bartender won't tell you when your order's ready until your food is at a table, and then he'll say you can go into the dining room. But if you don't know the system of how that operates, you can see people from Chicago. You see people from all over the place that come on in. They go, "Oh, I hear your fish fry is great." The bartender takes the information, and then they stand there, and then they get all pissed off, and they're all agitated. They're like, "Why can't I sit down at the table? Why do I have to stand here? The bar is packed. It's all these old people drinking old fashions, which is a Wisconsin drink." It's just more the environment than the food. The food, I will say, the fish fry is amazing. It's perch, deep fried. I mean, there's nothing better than that. But the whole experience brings home the whole representation of the food aspect. So,
Well, thanks for sharing a personal and telling a great story. You delivered.
yeah, right on. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks for the opportunity.
Well, Jake, thanks for your time and wisdom sharing today. You rock.
Thanks, Maggie. You too.
Okay, I expect my T-shirt in the mail any day now.
Yeah, yeah. All right, it's coming. Yeah, it's in the
Okay.
mail, right?
Yeah. And listeners, we appreciate you listening to the Brilliant Breakthroughs podcast, where you learn more about how to create brilliant breakthroughs for your small business. Oh man, this is a wrap. And until next week, shine brightly, folks.